Every other Friday, the same thing happens. Your paycheck lands, and for a day, you feel okay. Then rent clears, the car payment clears, the card minimum clears, and by Tuesday, you're refreshing your balance, wondering where it all went. Meanwhile, somebody who makes about what you make is quietly turning that same paycheck into a small fortune. And you cannot, for the life of you, figure out how. Here's the part that's going to annoy you. They're not doing anything you couldn't start by next week. The bar to get ahead of almost everyone in this country is sitting on the floor. It comes down to 6 boring decisions, and there's one specific number, smaller than a used car, that the day you hit it quietly puts you ahead of half the people around you. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why some people pull ahead while everyone else runs in place. Give me 20-something minutes, and you'll walk away with all 6, ahead of the 97% who never learn them. Let's start with the uncomfortable part, because I think the phrase ahead of 97% of people is doing some heavy lifting, and I owe you honesty before I owe you motivation. There are 2 ways to read it. The literal one first. The actual top 3% of American households by net worth start somewhere north of $7 million. And I'm not going to stand here and promise you $7 million in the next 20 minutes, because that would make me a liar. That version takes decades and a fair bit of luck. But that's not the version that matters, because here's the thing about wealth in this country that nobody says out loud. The gap between doing absolutely nothing and doing the basics consistently is enormous, cavernous. The median American household net worth sits at roughly $215,000. Sounds like a lot, right? Until you realize that number is propped up by home equity and by people in their 60s. Strip out the houses and look at people under 40, and the picture gets bleak fast. Most people in their 20s and 30s have a net worth hovering somewhere around the cost of a decent vacation. Some of them are underwater entirely, owing more than they own. So the real bar, the one you can actually clear, isn't $7 million. It's this. Become someone who saves consistently, invests in boring index funds, and avoids the financial landmines that blow up everyone around you. Do that, and you don't just inch ahead of the pack. You lap it. Let me introduce you to a guy I'm going to call Axel, because Axel is going to be our main character today, and Axel feels behind. He's 32. He's got a job that pays fine, a car that runs, and a creeping sense every time he opens Instagram that everyone his age has figured out something he hasn't. There's a 401k enrollment form sitting in his email right now. It's been there, unopened, marked unread, for the better part of 3 years. He looks at the people with the houses and the trips and the spotless kitchens, and he assumes they know a secret. Hold on to Axel. We're going to come back to him, and where he ends up is going to surprise you. But before the 6 decisions, you need to see just how low the bar actually is. Once you do, the whole thing stops feeling impossible and starts feeling almost unfair in your favor. Here's the reality of the country you're competing with. Remember that number I promised you, the one smaller than a used car? This is it. Set aside a few $1,000s in a plain savings account, a real emergency fund, and you have already done something more than half of Americans cannot do. It's not glamorous, it's a boring number in a boring account, and it already puts you ahead of half the country. Survey after survey shows that around 37% of people couldn't cover a surprise $500 expense with cash. A $500 expense. That's a single car repair. That's a vet bill. And more than half can't cover $1,000 from savings without reaching for a credit card or borrowing from someone. It gets starker at retirement. You'd assume people in their 60s would have stockpiled a fortune. They haven't. The median retirement account balance for people approaching retirement age is shockingly low, well under what they'd need to actually stop working. A huge chunk of the country is going to reach 65 with almost nothing but Social Security and a prayer. And it's not because the country is broke on income. It's because of what people do with the income they have. The average American carries a credit card balance, finances a car payment now averaging well over $700 a month, often stretched across 6 or 7 years, and treats their checking account like a finish line instead of a starting line. Money comes in, money goes right back out, and nothing gets left behind to grow. That's not a wealth problem. It's a leak problem, and leaks, unlike incomes, you can actually fix. And I want to be really clear about something because there's one rule I won't break in this video. I'm not telling you any of this so you can feel superior to these people, and neither should you. These aren't dumb people. They're teachers and nurses and warehouse workers who were never taught any of this. Nobody sat them down at 22 and explained compound interest. The school system taught them the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and then released them into a world engineered to separate them from their money. Nobody ever handed them a map. So, if any of this has been you, it was never a character flaw. Hold on to that because we are coming back to it. So if the bar's on the floor, why does getting ahead feel so impossible? Why is everyone, including people who make great money, still struggling? Here's the trap, and it's the most important thing I'll tell you all day. Income is not wealth. Let me say that again because it's the single most misunderstood idea in personal finance. Income is not wealth. I want you to meet a second character. We'll call him Julian. Julian makes way more than Axel, like double. So Julian has the truck, the boat, the watch, the house with the kitchen island the size of a twin bed. If you saw Julian at a barbecue, you'd assume Julian had won the game. But Julian is, in the most technical financial sense, broke. Every dollar Julian earns has a job to do before it even lands in his account. The truck payment, the boat payment, the mortgage on the house he bought to look successful, the lifestyle that expands to swallow every raise he's ever gotten. Julian is one missed paycheck away from the whole thing folding like a card table. Julian doesn't own his stuff owns him. This is what economists politely call lifestyle inflation, the quiet killer of wealth in this country. You get a raise and instead of investing the difference, you upgrade. Bigger apartment, nicer car, fancier groceries, and 6 months later, you feel exactly as broke as you did before, just with more expensive problems. You didn't escape the rat race. You just bought the rat a nicer wheel. The treadmill speeds up to match your legs every single time, and the worst part is you paid extra for the upgrade. But here's where it gets really interesting, and by interesting, I mean a little bit tragic. Even the people who do invest, who do try to build wealth, find a brand new way to sabotage themselves, and the data on this is brutal. A research firm has tracked investor behavior for decades and found the average investor consistently earns several percentage points less than the very funds they're invested in. Read that again. They own the fund goes up, and somehow they personally make less than the fund made. How? Well, because they panic. The market dips, they sell. The market's been hot for a while, they pile in at the top. They buy high and sell low over and over because they let their stomach do the trading. And your stomach is the single worst financial advisor on the planet. It treats the stock market like a Ouija board, hands trembling over the screen, asking it whether today is the day it finally ruins them. Spoiler, the stomach has never once been right. There's a famous study of stock traders that found the most active ones, constantly buying and selling, trying to be clever, badly underperformed the people who just sat still and did nothing. The title of that study basically said it all: trading is hazardous to your wealth. And then there's the data on the professionals, the highly paid fund managers in suits whose entire job is to beat the market. Over any 20-year stretch, the overwhelming majority of them, we're talking around 9 out of 10, failed to beat a simple index fund that a robot could run 9 out of 10. The pros lose to the boring robot, so let that sink in, because it's secretly fantastic news for you. The enemy isn't the market. The enemy isn't your lack of a finance degree. The enemy is behavior, and behavior, unlike the market, is the one thing you actually control, which brings us finally to the 6 decisions. Let's build you a Jane, because that's the other character I've been holding back. Jane works the same job as Axel, same paycheck, same Tuesday. She's not smarter than him, and she's not more disciplined. The only real difference is that one boring Sunday afternoon, coffee going cold next to her laptop, she clicked through the same forms Axel has been avoiding for 3 years and then basically never thought about her money again. That single afternoon is going to be worth more than every raise either of them ever gets. 10 years from now, the gap between them is going to look like they were never in the same income bracket at all. Decision number one, and the foundation of everything: your savings rate is the entire game when you're starting out. Not your salary, not your investment returns. How much of what you earn you actually keep. Here's why this matters more than people think. When you're young and your account is small, the amount you contribute completely dwarfs whatever the market does. If you've got $1,000 invested and the market has an incredible year, up 10%, you made $100. But if you save an extra $200 a month, that's $2,400 a year. You just out-earn the market by doing literally nothing but not spending. Early on, your savings rate is your superpower. Jane saves 20% of her income automatically before she ever sees it. Axel saves whatever's left at the end of the month, which, surprise, is usually nothing. That word automatically is doing a lot of work, and we'll come back to it because it might be the most important word in this whole video. Now, I can already hear the objection because I get it every single time. That's easy for you to say, Nick. I genuinely don't have 20% to spare. I'm barely covering rent. And for some people, right now, that's completely true. And I'm not going to insult you by pretending otherwise. But here's the reframe. The goal isn't 20% on day one. The goal is to start with whatever you can, even if it's $25 a month, and then funnel every future raise, every bonus, every tax refund straight into the machine before your lifestyle has a chance to absorb it. Most people let their spending rise to swallow every dollar they earn. You're going to do the opposite. You're going to let your saving rise to meet every raise. Same paycheck, completely different ending. Decision number two, this one is basically free money, and most people leave it sitting on the table like idiots, and I say that with love. If your job offers a 401k match, that is your employer saying, for every dollar you put in, up to a limit, I'll throw in $1 of my own. That is an instant, guaranteed 100% return on your money. There is no investment on earth that reliably doubles your money the second you make it, except this one. And yet, year after year, studies estimate Americans leave billions of dollars in unclaimed match money on the table. Roughly 1 in 4 people who could grab free money simply don't. Think about what that actually is. It's walking past a crisp $100 bill taped to the sidewalk every single payday because bending down to peel it off felt like paperwork. Axel doesn't because he never set it up and the paperwork felt confusing. Jane grabbed every cent of hers the first week on the job. Same employer. One of them is getting a raise, the other one is refusing. Decision number 3. Before you go wild investing, you kill any high-interest debt, and I mean specifically the credit card kind. Here's the math that makes this non-negotiable. The average credit card interest rate is sitting north of 20% right now. 20%. Meanwhile, the stock market averages around 10% a year over the long haul. So if you're carrying a credit card balance at 22% while also trying to invest for a 10% return, you are, and I want to be precise here, setting fire to money. Paying off a 22% debt is mathematically identical to earning a guaranteed 22% return, tax-free with zero risk. Nothing else comes close. So you knock that out first. Okay, everything we've done so far has been defense. Plugging leaks, bailing water out of the boat, and that matters, but nobody ever got rich bailing water. Here's where it turns, where the numbers stop playing defense and start playing offense, because now we bolt an engine onto this thing and point it at open water. Decisions 4, 5, and 6 all live in the same house, the order of operations for actually building wealth. Think of it as a priority list. Your money flows down. First, a small starter emergency fund, so one flat tire doesn't put you back into credit card debt. Then you capture that full employer match. Free money, like we said, then you wipe out the high interest debt. Then, and this is decision 4, you open a Roth IRA, the account everyone agrees you should have and almost nobody actually opens. A Roth is a beautiful little thing. You invest money you've already paid taxes on, it grows, and then you never pay taxes on it again. Not on the growth, not when you pull it out in retirement. The government basically gives up its claim on all those future gains, which is about as close to a gift as the IRS will ever hand you. For 2026, you can put $7,500 into one of these. That's the limit for this year, and it's the best deal the IRS gives you. Decision 5, once that Roth is full, you go back to your 401k and you push past the match, contributing more of your income into that tax-advantaged account, which for 2026 lets you shelter up to $24,000 from taxes. And decision 6, if you've somehow maxed all of that out, you're doing better than almost everyone alive, and you simply open a regular taxable brokerage account and keep buying the boring index funds. That's the whole staircase. Match, debt, Roth, max the 401k, then taxable. Most people never even find the first step. Now, here's where I deliver on the promise I made at the start, the math that makes all this discipline worth it. I can tell you to save and invest until I'm blue in the face, but numbers are what actually change behavior. So let me show you some math that should change how you see every dollar you spend. Let's say you're 25 years old and you invest just $200 a month, not a fortune. Less than a lot of people spend on takeout. You put that $200 a month into a basic index fund and you do nothing else. No fancy timing, no stock picking. You just keep buying. At the market's long run average of around 10% a year, by the time you're 65, you will have approximately $1.2 million from $200 a month. You personally will have contributed under $100,000 of your own dollars over those 40 years. The other 1.1 million, that's compound interest doing the heavy lifting while you sleep. Now, that 10% is a historical average of the S&P 500. Of course, the market doesn't go up in a straight line, and past performance isn't a guarantee of what happens next. Bump it to $500 a month starting at 25, and that number balloons to over $3 million by 65. $3 million. On a contribution most people could hit if they just stopped financing a brand new car every 5 years. But here is the single most important number in this entire video, and I need you to really feel it. The cost of waiting. Watch what happens if Axel waits. Say Axel finally gets his act together at 35 instead of 25 just 10 years later and puts in that same $500 a month. By 65, he ends up with around $1.1 million, which sounds great until you put it next to Jane, who started at 25. Jane has over $3 million, so a 10-year head start on the exact same monthly contribution is worth roughly $2 million. $2 million. Axel didn't contribute $2 million less. He contributed $60,000 less, but because he stole 10 years from compound interest, the gap explodes to $2 million. That is the most expensive procrastination in the world. Every year you wait isn't a small loss, it's a catastrophic one, and it gets worse the longer you stall. And I know start now sounds like the most generic advice on the planet, the kind of thing printed on a motivational mug, but run the numbers and it stops being a platitude. Each year you delay in your 20s isn't worth 1 year of contributions later, it's worth 3 to 5 years of them. Because the dollars you invest youngest compound the longest, which makes them worth wildly more than the dollars you invest at 50. Your earliest dollars are your most powerful dollars. You will never again get to invest a dollar as valuable as the one you can invest this week. And one quick thing while we're in the engine room, because it's a hidden leak that drains fortunes. The fund you buy matters, specifically its fee. If you buy a cheap index fund, you might pay 0.03% in fees. If you buy some actively managed fund your bank pushes on you, you might pay a full 1% or more. Sounds tiny, right? 1%. Over 30 years on a growing balance, that 1% fee can quietly eat north of $200,000 out of your final number. For doing worse than the cheap fund, it's like hiring a valet specifically to dent your car and then tipping him for it. You're paying a premium for a worse result. So you keep your fees on the floor and you let the boring fund win. Okay, take a breath. I want to step back from the numbers for a second because the math can make you miss the bigger thing. If you've been sitting there this whole time feeling a low hum of panic, feeling like you started too late, like everyone's ahead of you, like you've already blown it, I need you to hear this part especially. You are not behind. You've been playing a game where nobody ever told you the rules, and somehow you've been blaming yourself for losing it. That's not a personal failing. That's a setup. And here's the proof that the bar is genuinely reachable, not just in theory. There's a massive study of over 10,000 actual American millionaires, and the findings demolish basically everything pop culture tells you about who gets rich. The overwhelming majority of them, around 8 in 10, did not inherit their money. They built it. Their top professions weren't celebrities or tech founders. They were engineers, accountants, and teachers, like people on ordinary salaries. And the number one way they got there, boring, consistent investing in their workplace retirement account over a long period of time. That's it. They didn't time the market. They didn't find a secret. They just made the boring decisions early and let time do the rest. That's the whole thing. The ladder out of the 97% isn't hidden. It's just boring, and boring doesn't trend on social media. Nobody's making a viral video about quietly maxing a Roth IRA for 30 years, but that quiet, unglamorous discipline is the actual cheat code, and now you have it. And let me tell you what that cheat code actually buys you, because it isn't a yacht. It's quieter than that, and honestly, it's better. It's opening your banking app without your stomach dropping. It's your car making a horrible noise and you thinking annoying instead of catastrophe. It's saying yes to the trip, the wedding, the slightly too expensive dinner with friends without a spreadsheet running in the back of your head the whole time. It's looking at a job you've outgrown and knowing you could walk away if you had to, because you've built a cushion that gives you the one thing money is actually for: options. That's what being ahead of 97% really feels like. Not a flashy life, a calm one. And it is so much more within reach than the people selling you stuff want you to believe. And look, if any of this lit something up in you, if you're the kind of person who wants to actually do this instead of just watch a video about it and forget by dinner, that's exactly why I built a school community for people doing this together. It's the spot where folks trade what's working, ask the dumb questions without feeling judged, and keep each other from sliding back into Axel mode. The link's down below if you want in. No pressure, no pitch. Just a room full of people climbing the same boring, beautiful ladder. I'd love to have you. So let's finally check back in on Axel and Jane, because I promised you their ending, and the contrast is the whole point. Same job, same paycheck, same Tuesday, all those years ago. Like, as 10 years later, here's the scoreboard. Jane set everything up on autopilot in her first month and basically never thought about it again. Her savings came out automatically, her match got captured automatically, her index funds got bought automatically. She wasn't more disciplined than Axel day to day. She was just smart enough to remove herself from the equation. She made the decision once, and then automation made it for her every month after. That's the secret weapon of every quiet millionaire. They make the choice a single time, and then they take their own willpower out of the picture entirely. Axel, meanwhile, kept waiting for the right moment. He was going to start investing when he got the next raise, when things calmed down, when he felt more sure. He kept paying the minimum on a credit card, and that 401k enrollment form, the one sitting in his inbox, still unread, still marked unopened year after year, always something he'd handle this weekend. 10 years of weekends came and went the way they always do. Axel isn't lazy, Axel isn't stupid, Axel is most people. He just never made the boring decisions, and the boring decisions are the entire ball game. Here's the good news, and it's the note I want to leave you on. You get to decide which one you are starting today. Not next paycheck, not next year, today. Because we just did the math on what waiting costs, and it is savage. You don't need a higher salary. You don't need to understand the bond market or read a single earnings report. You automate a small amount into a cheap index fund, grab your free match, kill your high interest debt, and then have the almost superhuman patience to do nothing while compound interest quietly makes you wealthy. That's it. That's the thing 97% of people never do. Not because they can't, but because Nobody ever handed them the map. Well, now you've got it, so pick one decision off this list, the easiest one, and do it before you go to bed tonight. Future you, the one with options instead of obligations, is going to look back at this exact moment as the day the math finally started working for you instead of against you. And if you want company on the climb, you know where to find me. I'll see you there.